Blog Talk Radio.
Following ingredients include a look behind the scenes. Cook uncovered until hot. Add grist to taste.
I would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Once upon a time, there was a little girl.
The accident was over a year ago. A second woman has been elected president. The 12th planet has been named in the solar system. The last wild polar bear has died. I slept through it all. I was here for my waking. He called it a beginning. He said it was good. I think he may have thought that anything I did was good.
Welcome to Transition Radio with your host, Mark Angelo Cummings.
And your hostess, Jessica Lynn Cummings.
A show for trans folks by trans folks, here to let your voice be heard. Hello, and good evening, and welcome to Transition Radio. My name is Mark Angelo Cummings, your host.
And I am Jessica Lynn Cummings, your hostess. Tonight's show is being broadcast live from Silver City, New Mexico. We wanted to take a moment to thank our sponsors, restaurantstore.com. They have everything you can imagine to enhance your femininity.
And Dr. Varden Mudid-Olson, a facial feminization specialist based out of Jupiter, Florida. Please visit our website and click on the banners we have there to support our sponsors, our advertisers. We also want to take a time to thank all of you that have so kindly, out of the bottom of your heart, donated. No small amount is too small. We want to thank you, and you know who you are. Well, if you guys want to join in, and especially towards the end of the show, we're going to be talking about the different states and the procedures they have in the DMV. And every show, we're going to have 5 that we're going to talk about, and we welcome your input. We welcome you to share your experience. The number to call is 646-716-6895. Again, that's 646-716-6895. Today we're going to be talking about different issues, and one of them is there is a transgender female who is a trailblazer and very close to becoming the very first trans nun. There was an article written by the CTV London, and the article reads, a transgender trailblazer is hoping to be accepted into the Catholic Church as a nun. Tia Pasando was living as a man named Ted. She tells her story in her book called God Doesn't Hate You. If she does become a nun, she would be the first transgender one in the world. Born a hermaphrodite, somebody with hormones and at times biological parts of both gender, she says she's always felt trapped.
I am on a hormone replacement regimen to balance things, she says. Now living as a woman, Pasando wants to enter into a domain that's reserved exclusively for females. So far, the Catholic Church has been silent. 2 years ago, Pasando heard God calling her, and she knew she had to take her transformation further. I'm very convinced of the reality of God and the importance of such a calling, she says.
When Pasando decided to become a nun, she received her first priest blessing and is now going through the process to become a Carolinian sister and the first ever Roman Catholic transgender nun. She quotes, I'm in the training process, which is starting this August, so it is a positive start that I've undergone.
The Catholic Church has a history of condemning the LGBT community and doesn't typically embrace this group. A Carolinian covenant outside of Kitchener has said it won't be able to accommodate someone like Pasando. The Catholic Church is very good at maintaining a cohesion of hierarchy, and if there was an order from someone higher up that prevented me, eventually it would come down to me having to appeal to the Pope, Pasando said.
Anteve of the Rainbow Network says Pasando is likely to face opposition. She quotes, "It is to be expected. It's not about the resistance she faces. It's about the dialogue she creates. If the Sando can make inroads in the church, it will open up doors for others. The very fact that she started the process for me is outstanding because the first time it may be that she only gets so far in the resistance as such, but any step is a positive one."
Cassandra realizes the church may shut its doors on her dreams. Forgiveness needs to begin somewhere, she says. It needs to begin with us, all of us, those in the LGBT community and those of the Christian faith. Pope Francis has made huge strides with the gay community, preaching for greater inclusion and acceptance of homosexuals. This, in part, has helped to fuel her decision. She says the time is right for a transgender night.
We'll have Pasando on our TV segment July 31st. That's a Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The task force withdraws support from ENDA. The outcry of LGBT opposition to the outdated exception real version of ENDA currently stalled in Congress just got a whole lot louder. This hour, National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, the nation's oldest LGBT civil rights organization and a leader in the fight for ENDA for more than 2 decades, announced that it has decided to drop its support for the measure. The group says that the broad religious exemption contained in the current version of ENDA are creating gaping legal loopholes to discriminate in federal, state, and local legislations.
NGLTF Executive Director Rhea Carey explains via press release. The morning after the Supreme Court's Hobby Lobby ruling, it rhymes, ruling, we all woke up in a changed and intensified landscape of broad religious exemptions being used as an excuse to discriminate. We are deeply concerned that ENDA's broad exemption will be used as a similar license to discriminate across the country. We are concerned that these types of legal loopholes could negatively impact other issues affecting LGBT people and their families, including marriage, access to HIV/AIDS treatment and prevention, and access to other reproductive health services.
I wanted to add that Hobby Lobby has been in the news a lot for the past few weeks, and it's interesting, the whole outcome. Anyway, as one of the lead advocates on this bill for 20 years, we do not take this move lightly, but we do take it unequivocally. We now oppose this version of ENDA because of its too broad religious exemption. We cannot be complacent in writing such exemptions into federal law. Carey, who revealed in an op-ed for the Advocate that the decision came after much soul-searching, says that LGBT people should enjoy the exact same protections under federal law that are afforded to every other marginalized group.
The campaign to create broad religious exemptions for employment protections repeats a pattern we've seen before in methodically undermining voting rights. Women's access to reproductive health and affirmative action. It is time for fair-minded people to block this momentum rather than help speed it into law. We need new federal non-discrimination legislation that contains a reasonable religious accommodation. LGBT people should have the same protections as those contained in Title VII of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. Legal equality is federal law.
The truth is that those who seek to deny full equality are succeeding by using religion to create a quasi-moral, completely legal mechanism to discriminate. We can't let them succeed. We can't let them ignore the vast majority of people and millions of people of faith who think that discrimination is completely immoral and should be completely illegal. She's right, of course, as others have written for months now. These misleading and disingenuous appeals to religious freedom and religious liberty are part of a major strategic and rhetorical shift on the part of the LGBT right.
The religious right knows that they've ultimately lost the battle against marriage equality and LGBT rights more broadly. So they're switching gears, focusing their efforts on ensuring that homophobia remains an acceptable prejudice in society, by carving out so-called religious liberty exemptions to marriage equality and non-discrimination laws that are as broad as they can possibly get away with.
And we see it all too clear. This is all about politics. Politics and religion are supposed to be two separate things, but we see a lot of religious rights individuals infiltrating the political system, and they have their way by lobbying, giving money to the candidates and to the whole corporate circus, and we see things that we shouldn't be seeing.
Isn't it the political movement that did the whole thing about separation between church and state?
Yes.
Yeah,
but that's all a ploy. Of
course it is.
It's all
like everything else.
People have to remove the veils of their eyes and realize that it's all based on lies. Well, let's talk a little bit about Social Security guidelines. I know we as a community are constantly unhappy about things that are taking place, but we have to celebrate our victories. The Social Security Administration issued an update guideline regarding the eligibility of transgender individuals for survivors' benefits. This policy came in effect in the wake of a case involving a 92-year-old transgender World War II veteran, Robina Asti, who, in spite of being legally married to her husband, Norwood, was denied spousal benefit after his death.
Under the previous policy, all cases involving transgender individuals' marriage-based claims were put through an extra level of scrutiny and were sent to the SSA's Regional Chief Counsel for review. Now, transgender people will no longer be subject to that increased level of review and will be processed, the same as claims from cisgender non-trans individuals. There are still 7 states, however, where the SSA will conduct additional legal review: Florida, Idaho, Kansas, Ohio, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Texas. This is due to a belief by the SSA that state marriage laws regarding transgender individuals are unclear, making the existing case-by-case review process necessary.
Transgender marriages are no longer treated as suspect in the eye of the SSA. Lambda Legal Transgender Rights Project Director Drew said in a written statement, the content and tone of the new guidelines shows that the SSA has taken a big step forward in cultural competency about transgender community. This important federal agency is providing greater dignity and demonstrating a greater respect for transgender people. And that is a big step, I must say. We always try to find the negative in everything in our situation, but there has been a lot of positives. Now, most of us are not aware of the policies required from the DMV or even the Social Security offices and the guidelines that to prevent embarrassments when you go to these institutions and try to get your legal name changed, your gender marker changed, your pictures. We're too quick to get upset about things, but we need to know what the procedures are.
And the Social Security's Gender and Name Change Protocol, the Social Security Administration, SSA, announced a new policy that will modernize and standardize the process for changing the gender designation in Social Security records. This new policy will allow transgender people to maintain their privacy and prevent unnecessary outing to Social Security staff and to healthcare providers.
Under the revised policy, transgender people will be able to change their gender on their Social Security records by submitting either government-issued documentation that reflects a change or certification from a physician that confirms that they have received clinical treatment for gender transition. This change is in line with policies adopted by other federal agencies, including the Department of State, the Office of Personnel Management, and the Veterans Health Administration. The SSA has also provided staff with guidelines on respectful treatment of transgender individuals. These records are used in everything from employment to housing. Now, let's take a look. Unless you wanted to add something regarding that, I think it's pretty fair.
The Social Security Administration is now a federal law, so nationwide, it's the same for everybody. We need to emphasize that it's clinical treatment to get your gender designation changed on your Social Security card, not surgical treatment, which means that clinical treatment, you have to have a letter from your doctor that prescribes your hormones, which in turn, that letter has your endo or physician should know how that letter is supposed to be worded and everything like that. But if there's any question, the SSA on their website, the Social Security Administration, they have that information and template guideline as to how that letter is supposed to be effectively written, worded, and displayed.
Yeah, and the wording is very important.
The clinical treatment is just HRT, proof from a doctor that you're undergoing the clinical treatment and have completed the clinical treatment, quote unquote, to become that of the female gender. So clinically you're female, but not surgically.
Right, and also one of the things we ran into is you need to go to the Social Security office first, get all that changed before the actual DMV changes. In Florida,
every state's different,
right.
But Florida, yes. But it would probably be the best since the Social Security Administration is the easiest to get with the endo letter or a letter from your physician that prescribes your hormones. You go into the SSA, get that changed, wait 48 hours, then go to the DMV, and you may not have as many problems at the DMV. But I do think there's like a little gray area in there for the SSA that you have to have a obvious female name. But I'm not to be quoted on that.
Things are ever changing, and we need to really not make such spectacles of ourselves in the media and anger these institutions that have so gracefully, and I do say gracefully, have allowed us this far to do what we are doing. Other countries don't allow this. Other countries, give their transgender population a lot of grief. So we have to be thankful. We have to realize that we have to take baby steps. This is hard for individuals to deal with. It's something that we thought of all our lives, but a lot of people are still digesting this whole gender change. It is not your typical thing.
Especially in the backwoods countries.
Yeah.
What you mean you want to change your gender?
Child, you've got problems. We really have to be compassionate with the world and understand that this is not easy.
Take off that makeup before I take your picture.
You're a boy. Act like a boy, darn it. Things of that nature. I mean, it's comical. We have to realize, hey, come on, it's not everyone's going to get it, and that's okay. Little by little, baby steps, we'll get there.
Well, my rebellious side would be the one that would say, okay, no problem. Here, let me take off my shirt for the picture then.
Yeah, but what does that solve except get you in jail?
Oh, well. Hey.
That's another point, We have transgender individuals bitch about where to put us, but let's stop getting ourselves into trouble so we don't have to go to jail. I mean, what's that for a concept?
Hey, I wouldn't mind going to jail. I'd own the cell block.
That or you'd be killed. One of the two.
Oh, I would not be killed.
Let's talk about the DMV, the different states. We're going to cover 5 states every week, and please, we welcome your call, share your experience. We learn through one another, and it's important that we share experience, that we educate one another instead of getting angry at the world, angry at one another. Let's unite and let's try to get things forward, not backwards.
No, anyway. Remember, these are DMV policies to change your gender marker on your driver's license. And this is strictly DMV, nothing to do with SSA, total different situation. But in Alabama, here's what the DMV in Alabama requires. SRS is required in order for the gender change to be permitted. Documentation of said change is needed to be signed by the physician who completed surgery.
Now, you would figure that the DMV and the Social Security would have the same exact thing all throughout. I don't know why things are complicated.
Well,
it's great news.
The other thing that you can do too is, obviously full SRS is very expensive, and most people can't afford it, or they're not able to do it medically, et cetera, et cetera.
Or they don't want to.
But if you're in a state where you have to have the gender change, you could actually get by probably with an orchiectomy, bilateral orchiectomy, by having the doctor that performs that surgery provide a letter that states genital reconstructive surgery, because it's non-specific. And there is a HIPAA law that has a situation about doctor-patient privilege and confidentiality.
But in Alabama, it appears that you are required to have an SRS, and that's because the good old boys don't want to have in between. Anyway, let's go to Alaska. The applicant must provide either one full certification or Number one, yeah, a full certification change of sex designation, amended birth certificate, a valid U.S. passport, or court order issued by a court in the United States, gender change of sex or gender.
And it says United States.
Right. Yeah.
So well, it doesn't have to be in Alaska.
Alaska is part of the United States.
No, it says here, court order issued by a court in the United States. In the United States. So if you went to court in Florida and got a court order to change your gender, then Alaska would accept it.
Well, of course, it's part of the United States, but it has 4 different procedures. Number 1, full certification for change or sex designation. Number 2, amended birth certificate. Number 3, a valid U.S. passport. Or number 4, court order. Okay.
Must provide either, so it doesn't have to be all of these. It just has to be one or the other.
But now, unless another form of documentation is provided, the certification form must be signed by a medical or mental health provider stating that I have treated the applicant or reviewed and evaluated the medical history of the applicant with regards to the condition necessitating the request change of sex designator on the driver's license or ID card. The applicant has to have appropriate clinical treatment for the condition necessitating the change, and the change is expected to be permanent. The applicant, the gender identification is male or female,
Exactly, and that's stating that all you need is a letter from your endo as well, which is the same thing that you have in Florida that I know that I personally dealt with in Florida, is that you just have to have a letter from your endo. So any of those 4 options, you have a clinical treatment letter from your endocrinologist in Alaska, you can get your gender marker changed on your driver's license. Now let's move on to Arizona. A customer must request that the gender noted on the record be changed. To accomplish this change, the customer must apply for a new license duplicate. It is not necessary for the customer to have completed the surgical gender change procedure. A signed statement from a licensed physician is required, however. The signed statement must include a statement to the effect that the customer is irrevocably committed to the gender change process, include the physician's license number, and be presented within 3 months from the date the statement was signed by the physician. So again, Arizona is under the same on the same page that it's clinical and not surgical.
Okay, Arkansas. Documentation of change is needed. Arkansas also has a statute that legal presence and residency in Arkansas must be proved when obtaining an Arkansas driver's license. They're pretty vague, Arkansas here. Documentation of change is needed. So I guess,
So that could be clinical or surgical, but it's very vague.
And notice that the Alabama, Arkansas, the more, to use the word backward states that are not really in with the times, make it a little more difficult for trans individuals.
Now let's move over to the open-minded state of California. Requires an application requesting to change his or her gender indefinite to
identifier.
Identifier. Well, it's so small it's hard to read. But anyway, requires an applicant requesting to change his or her gender identifier to complete a medical information authorization gender change form, DL328. This form is to be completed by a licensed physician or psychologist. The doctor is to identify that the gender identifier is to certify that the... Stop correcting me.
Well, you correct me.
No, I don't. The doctor is to certify that the gender identifier being requested is consistent with the applicant's gender disposition and gender change status if applicable. I need a fucking telescope to read this.
the doctor is decertified that the gender identifier. So California is not that open. The doctor is decertified that the gender identifier being requested is consistent with the applicant's gender deposition and gender
Disposition.
Yeah, and gender.
But it says physician or psychologist. A physician does not. That would be a surgeon. So it's not stating surgical. It's stating clinical and mental.
The form has to be completed by one of those.
By a physician or a psychologist, psychotherapist.
Yeah.
So your gender ID specialist that you went to could fill out that form and it would be accepted. Because the gender specialist is saying that this is who you are and your gender is congruent with who you feel you are.
And a lot of these are affidavits that I know that when I did mine back in 2003, there wasn't a lot of guidelines in Florida. It was not very friendly at the time, and I had to actually educate the center who did my surgery on how to do this affidavit because I had no clue. I was there first, so I had to go online, find these affidavit forms, fill it out, and then have them sign it. And they were a little hesitant about it because I didn't have full SRS at the time, so you had to have SRS in order to get, your gender morphing change. So
What girl you want to change your gender?
There was a loophole that was created by one of the actual law firms that was, I forget the name of the law firm at the time, that was creating the changes here, or there in Florida. We're not in Florida anymore. Anyway, guys, we would love to hear your experience with the DMV or even Social Security. And we're going to continue to report every week 5 different states. We left off in California. If you wanted to add anything to what we just said,
or if you live in these states and you've had a problem that they're not following those guidelines, call in and let us know. Have a discussion about that, what your experience was.
Yeah, which is very important now where you're helping somebody else not go through the same things that a lot of trans individuals have been going through the DMV offices. I think if we educate each other and if we help each other, we might be able to battle this instead of yelling at everybody. Yeah.
Well, see, my thing is I think they're making such a stink about it now is because of all the publicity transgender people are getting through the new advocacy movement. I think people are really starting to look negatively upon trans people. And now, where they were tolerant, they're beginning to lose their tolerance because of the vilification that's taken place by some in the community claiming to be advocates for all of us. So that's another thing, I want to bring up that Laura Jane Grace did a interview and, she made it a very, very positive outlook on her, but she also was representing the community, but she also claimed at the beginning that I do not speak for everyone because not everyone in the trans community is going to be like me or the same as me. Everyone is different, and I really respect that, which is where these other advocates seem to be going wrong. That, we trans people, nothing. That's your opinion, and opinions are like buttholes. Everyone's got one, and they all stink.
And I think that this craze that we're going through right now, there's a transgender employee who's been employed by Hobby Lobby for 16 years, changed her name legally in 2010. Now all of a sudden, this issue about her not being able to use the bathroom because attorneys are picking up these cases because they want pro bono, they want publicity, they want to be able to get money. So we are being used as pawns. And if we don't see this, that is all it is. It's not that they want to help us. It's not that these political organizations want to help us. It's all about their benefit.
They see financial gain.
Exactly. Well, anyway, guys, please tune in this Thursday. We have Jay Johnson, a wonderful spiritual human being, great friend. She has helped the LGBT community greatly. She is a member of the LGBT and promotes a lot of media. You don't want to miss the show. It's going to be heartfelt and warming. Tune in Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Gay Live Television. We want to thank our sponsors. We want to thank our advertiser. We want to thank all of you who have donated and helped us out. We want to thank the listeners, and we want to tell you guys that
We love you, but remember to always love yourselves too. Good night.
And thank you. Catch you Thursday.